Well, happy Friday. It's October the 11th, 2019, Journal 192, T plus 192. I'm going to cheat this evening, and I'll explain why in a minute. Actually, I'll explain why right now. In a conversation that I had with a friend, someone inadvertently just turned around and just blurted out, "It's all a game." And I know that sounds strange in and of itself. It's all a game. What does it mean? It doesn't mean anything. It's just don't take things too seriously. But what it triggered was something that was really interesting, probably about a decade ago, 2011, actually. Um, I had the privilege of introducing my son, Ryan, at a very large automotive aftermarket industry event in which he was one of the presenters. We both shared that responsibility. He presented one session and I presented another, different one. His presentation, which was excellent, by the way, um, not just because I'm his dad, but because it was really very well thought out, had to do with dealing with the generational gap and Generation Y in particular, and had a lot of really interesting information in the presentation. But what happened was that was so fascinating was that this just offhand remark about it's all a game triggered memories of that particular presentation and one specific section of that presentation in which Ryan, in talking about marketing and the importance of relationships that exist between providers and clients, talked about what constituted a good game, what made a good game, and what made a not so good game or a bad game. And it's something that Ryan has a fair degree of expertise in because he works for a video game developer, and I believe it was Ted Price, his boss, president of the company, who shared with Ryan these rules for a good game and a bad game. And it's almost a code, I think, that they live by at Insomniac. And it fascinated me. I've thought about it often, and I've thought about it in respect to how it relates to life in general and to my industry in particular. And actually wound up writing a column for the magazine I write for today on the same subject. Uh, and that's what I meant when I said I was cheating, because this is so um, fresh in my mind that it's really hard for me to think or discuss anything else. And I think it's relevant. I think it's something that's important. I think it's something that you can relate to um, because it has a lot to do with life. It has a lot to do with performance of any kind, anywhere, for any reason. Um, so, what constitutes a good game, a great game? What makes a good game? Um, and the rules are really simple, and they're pretty much what you'd think they'd be. Um, a good game has a clear objective. I mean, you know what you're striving to accomplish. There's no um, confusion about it. The objective is clear. That clear objective is worthwhile. It it is something to be pursued, something that is worthy of your effort, your energy, your time, uh, all the things that go into accomplishing um, something worthwhile, something substantial, something of consequence. Um, it requires specific and proper tools. You can't just go out and do it. You really need tools that you have to acquire and learn how to use in order to be successful. It should have a compelling story. I'm a firm believer that all things should have a compelling story. We thought in we think in pictures. It's not that we thought in pictures. We think in pictures, and we use words to describe what we see in our own minds. And it doesn't matter how those words appeared, whether they were spoken in great uh, epic stories, oral traditions, um, whether they were learned and repeated in song, or whether they were painted on a cave wall. I mean, that's the way we as human beings process things. So it has to have a compelling story, a story that you can get involved in, a story that you can immerse yourself in. It has to be an immersive story so that you can you almost get lost in the story. And it has to have an immersive universe. It has to have um, it has to have a reality that completely surrounds and absorbs you. And it also has to have an enticing reward. In a subsequent conversation that Ryan and I had while I was struggling with one of the video games that he had lent to me, he told me that a good game, a really good game, um, teaches you how to win through your failures and continuous play. In other words, as you proceed through the game and as you fail, as you miss objectives, the game will actually teach you what you need to do in order to go ahead and be successful. So those are all the things that a good game, all elements of a good game. What's a bad game? Well, a bad game is the opposite of having a clear objective, a worthwhile objective. A bad game it isn't clear what the objective is at all. Um, so it's like, what's the point? Who cares? Um, the instructions or the process in a bad game are not clear. So you're always wandering around saying to yourself, what do I do? What happens next? What do I do? Perhaps more important is you wind up scratching your head going, it's like, how do I win? What if I don't know what winning is and I don't know what winning looks like? And if the goals and objectives aren't clear, what the hell am I doing here? Why am I even attempting this? And then finally, why do I care? What difference does it make if I don't play this game or if I'm not good at this game because it's frustrating me? It's not fun. Why even bother? How many things in life can you relate that to? I know that when I came back from that trip, I looked at those basic principles of a good game and a bad game in terms of my own business, and I came back and I made changes because there were things that were obviously wrong based upon these criteria. And the changes that we made a difference. And one of the other things that Ryan built into his presentation was what motivates gamers. Well, gamers are people like everybody else, and what motivates a gamer is the same set of criteria that are going to motivate an employee or a client. So, what are those things? Achievement, all right? You accomplish something. Affiliation, you can belong to a group of other people who have achieved the same thing that you have. Status within that group for accomplishing these goals and objectives. Um, the satisfaction that comes from meeting a challenge and hopefully transcending that challenge, and a little bit of fantasy, which is always good if you have a fertile and imaginative mind. So think about those things. Think about all of them and think about them in terms of where you work and what your work is like. Think of them in terms of the business that you own if you own a business. Think about them in terms of life in general and goals and objectives that you seek to achieve, and what obstacles stand in your way and how you can go ahead and transcend those obstacles. Um, I've been thinking about them all day. I actually wrote a column today. It's really rare for me to complete a whole column in one day. I always kid around saying there's this little guy that lives in my head that wrote the column. I didn't write it. He just was waiting for me to get out of the way so he could get it out. Um, and that's pretty, it's 1,000 words. It's a lot of words to come up with in one afternoon, and that are coherent and make sense. But I had a good foundation. I had the work that my son had done. So Ryan, thank you very much. Ted, thank you very much. Insomniac, thank you very much. These basic rules make a difference in your life. So in the meantime, while you're thinking about that, stay well, take care, have a great weekend. I'll talk to you soon.